The SUV flipped once, twice, then vanished into the white wall of snow. Arland Hayes stood frozen on the roadside, his breath caught somewhere between his chest and throat. For 3 seconds, he was back in that other storm, watching metal crumple and lights fade while sirens wailed too late. His wife, Emma, had waited. No one came. He ran, not because he was brave, not because he knew what he'd find. He ran because he remembered what it felt like to die alone in the cold, waiting for help that never arrived. Can he save someone this time? Or will he witness a repeat of the tragedy? The snow had been falling since dawn, thick and relentless, the kind that erased roads and swallowed sound. Arland Hayes had driven these mountain routes for years, knew every curve and dip by memory. But today the world had turned into a blank page. He gripped the wheel tighter, squinting through the windshield as the wipers fought a losing battle against the storm. He should not have been out here. Rowan was home with Mrs. Callahan from next door, probably building another fort out of couch cushions, or begging for a third round of hot chocolate. The boy was 8 now, old enough to understand when his father had to leave for a few hours, young enough to still ask when he would be back. Arland always came back. That was the promise he made after Emma died. He would always come back. The supply run to town had taken longer than expected. The hardware store was nearly empty, shelves picked clean by people smarter than him who had stocked up before the storm hit. He had managed to grab what he needed: firewood, batteries, canned soup, and started the drive home before the roads became impassable. The radio had been warning about whiteout conditions for the past hour, urging people to stay indoors. He was almost there, just another 10 miles. That was the promise he made after Emma died. He would always come back. The SUV had flipped. He could see it now, a dark shape barely visible through the curtain of white, resting on its side like a dying animal. Steam or smoke rose from the engine, dissipating instantly in the wind. No one else was on the road. No headlights in either direction, just him and the wreckage and the storm that seemed to grow louder by the second. For a moment, Arland could not move. His hand stayed locked on the wheel, his breath coming short and fast. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Emma's car, the twisted metal, the way the snow had looked almost peaceful as it settled on the shattered glass. He had been too late then. 20 minutes too late. The paramedic had said she had died on impact, but he knew better. He knew she had been alone in those final moments, waiting for someone to find her. His door was open before he realized he had made the decision. The cold slammed into him, stealing the air from his lungs, but he was already moving. His boots sank into snow up to his shins as he half ran, half stumbled down the embankment. The wind screamed in his ears. He could not feel his face. The SUV was worse up close. The driver's side was crushed against the ground, the windshield spiderwebbed, but somehow still intact. Arland circled to the passenger side, now facing skyward, and peered through the window. A woman lay crumpled in the driver's seat, held in place by her seatbelt, her head tilted at an angle that made his chest tighten. Blood streaked her temple. Her eyes were closed. He pounded on the window. "Hey, can you hear me?" Nothing. Arland tried the door, but it was locked. He looked around frantically, spotted a rock half buried in snow, and grabbed it. 3 strikes, and the window shattered. He reached in, fumbling for the lock, and yanked the door open. Cold air rushed into the vehicle. The woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and she made a sound somewhere between a groan and a whimper. Alive. She was alive. "Okay," Arland said, more to himself than to her. "Okay, you are okay." He assessed the situation quickly. The seatbelt had probably saved her life, but now it was pinning her at an awkward angle. He could not tell if anything was broken. Moving her could make things worse. But leaving her here was out of the question. The storm was only getting stronger, and even if he called for help, no ambulance was making it up this mountain tonight. He unclipped the seatbelt and caught her as she slumped forward. She was lighter than he expected, dressed in clothes that belonged in a boardroom, not a blizzard. Tailored coat, leather gloves, heels that were completely impractical. He maneuvered her out of the vehicle as carefully as he could, his muscles straining with the effort. She did not wake, but her breathing was steady. That had to be enough. Getting her up the embankment was harder. The snow had turned his tracks into slick trenches, and twice he nearly lost his footing. By the time he reached his truck, his arms were shaking and his lungs burned from the cold. He laid her across the back seat, tucking his own jacket around her, then climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. The heater roared to life. Arland glanced at her in the rearview mirror. In the dim light, he could see her face more clearly now. Mid-30s, maybe. Sharp features, the kind that looked used to control, even unconscious. There was something composed about her, like she was used to holding everything together. Her purse had fallen to the floor of the SUV. He had grabbed it on instinct, and now he rifled through it, looking for identification. Mara Lennox. The name was printed on a sleek business card tucked into her wallet. CEO, Lennox Enterprises. He did not recognize the company, but the title told him enough. This woman lived in a different world than he did, one where storms were inconveniences handled by assistants and backup plans. Out here, though, none of that mattered. He pulled back onto the road, or what he thought was the road. Visibility was near zero now, and the GPS on his phone had lost signal miles ago. Home was out of the question, too far, too dangerous. But there was another option. The old cabin his father used to own, tucked back in the woods about 3 miles west. Arland had not been there in over a year. But it would have 4 walls, and a roof. Maybe some firewood left in the shed. It would have to do. The drive took 20 minutes that felt like an hour. The truck's tires spun uselessly more than once, and he had to reverse and try different angles to keep moving forward. When the cabin finally appeared through the trees, he felt a rush of relief so strong it almost made him dizzy. It looked smaller than he remembered, half buried in snow. But the door still opened when he kicked it. Inside was cold and dark, and smelled like old wood. But it was shelter. That was all that mattered. Arland carried Mara inside and laid her on the single bed in the corner. There was no electricity, but he found matches and a kerosene lamp in the cupboard along with a few dusty blankets in a trunk by the wall. He started a fire in the wood stove, coaxing the flames until they caught and held. Warmth began to seep into the room, slow but steady. He sat on the floor near the stove, his back against the wall, and watched her breathe. She had not woken yet. He did not know if that was good or bad. Outside, the storm hammered against the cabin walls, furious and indifferent. They were trapped here now, both of them. He had saved her life, maybe. Or maybe he had only delayed the inevitable. Arland closed his eyes and thought of Rowan. Mrs. Callahan would keep him safe. She had to. Mara woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of wind trying to tear the world apart. Her eyes opened slowly, vision blurred and head pounding. The ceiling above her was wooden, unfamiliar, crossed with beams that looked like they had been there since before she was born. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through her ribs, sharp enough to steal her breath. She pressed a hand to her side and felt the rough fabric of a blanket she did not recognize. "Where am I?" she wondered. A silent question. The last thing she remembered was the steering wheel spinning uselessly in her hands, the SUV tilting, gravity turning cruel, then nothing, just darkness and the distant sound of her own heartbeat. She turned her head carefully and saw him. A man sitting across the room, silhouetted against the glow of a fire burning in what looked like an old wood stove. He was watching her, his posture tense, like he was not sure whether she was going to scream or pass out again. Mara's instinct was to do both. Instead, she forced her voice to work. "Who are you?" The man did not move. "Arland Hayes." "You crashed. I pulled you out." His tone was flat, factual. No emotion. That steadied her somehow, made the situation feel less like a nightmare and more like something she could navigate. She took inventory of herself. Bruised, cold, but alive. Her coat was gone. So were her heels. Someone had covered her with blankets, plural, and there was a damp cloth on the small table beside the bed that looked like it had been used to clean the blood from her temple. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice steadier now. "Old cabin. About 3 miles off the main road. Storm is too bad to get you anywhere else." Mara processed this. She looked toward the single window, but it was black outside, snow piling against the glass. The wind howled like something alive. She had been in board meetings that felt less hostile than this room. "You should have left me," she said. Though she did not mean it. Arland's expression did not change. Could not. That single word hung between them, heavy with something unspoken. Mara studied him more closely. He looked like someone who had stopped caring about appearances a long time ago. Worn flannel, jeans with mud on the knees, hands that had seen work. His face was weathered, tired, in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. Mid-40s maybe, the kind of man who fixed things because no one else would. She sat up slowly, biting back a groan, and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor was freezing against her bare feet. "Easy," Arland said, standing. He crossed the room in 3 steps and crouched beside her, close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes, despite the guarded tone. "You hit your head pretty hard. Could have a concussion. I am fine," Mara said automatically. "You are not." The certainty in his voice irritated her. She did not need someone telling her what she was or was not. She had spent the last 15 years building a company from nothing, surviving board coups and hostile takeovers, and competitors who smiled while sharpening knives. A car accident and a headache were not going to stop her, but when she tried to stand, her legs buckled. Arland caught her before she hit the floor, his grip firm, but not rough. For a moment, she was too close to him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off his body, close enough to realize just how cold she actually was. "Let me help," he said quietly. Mara wanted to refuse. She wanted to snap at him, push him away, prove that she did not need anyone. But the truth was, she could barely stand. So she let him guide her back to the bed, hating every second of it. He stepped back once she was seated, giving her space. "There is soup," he said, nodding toward a pot sitting on the stove. "Canned. But it is hot." She was not hungry, but she nodded anyway. Arland ladled some into a chipped mug and brought it to her. She took it, wrapping her hands around the ceramic, letting the heat seep into her fingers. The first sip burned her tongue, but she did not care. It was the first thing that had felt real since she woke up. They did not talk while she ate. Arland returned to his spot by the stove, feeding it another log, then sat back down. The fire crackled and popped, the only sound besides the wind. Mara finished the soup and set the mug aside, her mind starting to work again, cataloging the situation. No phone signal, no power, no way out until the storm passed. She glanced at Arland and wondered what kind of man drove into a blizzard to save a stranger. An idiot, probably. Or someone with nothing left to lose. "You live up here?" she asked. Not anymore. Used to come here with my dad when I was a kid. And now I live down the mountain. Have a son. Mara's stomach tightened. How old? 8. She did the math. He had left a child at home to pull her out of a wreck. She did not know what to do with that information, so she filed it away and moved on. He will be fine, Arland added, like he could read her thoughts. Neighbors with him. She knows to keep him safe. Mara nodded, though she did not understand. She had never had to worry about someone waiting for her at home. Her father had died when she was 16. And after that, it had just been her. No siblings. No close friends. No one who would notice. If she did not come back from a business trip, that was the price of power. You climbed high enough, and eventually you climbed alone. Thank you, she said, the words stiff and unfamiliar. For pulling me out. Arland looked at her, his expression unreadable. Do not mention it. But she could tell. It had cost him something. She could see it in the way his shoulders stayed tense, the way his eyes flickered to the window every few minutes, like he was expecting something terrible to happen. This man was afraid, not of the storm, but of something else. Something she did not understand yet. The hours crawled by. The storm did not let up. Mara tried to sleep, but could not. Her head throbbed, and every time she closed her eyes, she felt the SUV tipping again, felt the world spinning out of control. So she stayed awake, watching the fire, watching Arland, trying to make sense of the strange limbo they had fallen into. Around what she guessed was midnight, the temperature dropped. She could feel it in her bones, a cold that seeped through the blankets and settled in her chest. She pulled them tighter, but it did not help. Her teeth started to chatter, Arland noticed. He always seemed to notice. Fire is not enough, he said, standing. He grabbed another blanket from the trunk and brought it to her, draping it over her shoulders. It helped, but only barely. Still cold? He asked. I am fine, she lied. He did not believe her. She could see it in the way he looked at her, the way his jaw tightened. He glanced at the door, then back at her, then at the fire. She could practically see him running through options in his head. We need to share body heat, he said finally, the words coming out like he was confessing to a crime. Mara stared at him. What? You are going into shock. I can see it. If your core temperature drops too much. I said, I am fine. You are not. There it was again. That certainty. That infuriating, unbearable certainty. Arland crossed his arms. Look, I know this is not. I know it is not ideal, but we do not have a choice. The storm is getting worse, and this cabin was not built for weather like this. If you want to survive the night, you need to stay warm. Mara's pride screamed at her to refuse. She was Mara Lennox. She did not need help. She did not need anyone. But her body was betraying her, shaking so hard now that she could not hide it. And somewhere beneath the layers of armor she had spent years building, a small, terrified voice whispered that he was right. Fine, she said. The word barely audible. Arland nodded, his face carefully blank. He moved to the bed, sitting on the edge, then laying down on top of the blankets, keeping as much distance between them as the narrow mattress allowed. He pulled one of the blankets over both of them, creating a shared cocoon of warmth. Mara lay rigid beside him, every muscle locked. She could feel the heat coming off him, could hear his breathing, steady and controlled. It was the most intimate she had been with another person in years, and it terrified her more than the crash had. Relax, Arland said quietly. You are burning energy you do not have. I do not know how to do this, she admitted, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Do what? Be weak. Arland did not respond right away. When he did, his voice was softer than she expected. It is not weakness. It is survival. Mara turned her head slightly, looking at him in the dim firelight. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hand stayed carefully at his sides. "You are scared?" she said. It was not a question. Yeah. Of what? He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then finally he spoke. "My wife, Emma, died 3 years ago. Car accident, storm like this one." Mara's breath caught. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way he had hesitated before pulling her from the SUV. The way he looked at her like she was a ghost. The way he had said he could not leave her. "I am sorry," she said, and meant it. "Me too." They lay in silence after that, the weight of his grief settling over them like another blanket. Mara felt something shift inside her. A crack in the wall she had spent so long building. She did not know this man. She did not owe him anything. But for the first time in years, she felt the urge to give something anyway. "My father died when I was 16, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Heart attack. I was the one who found him." Arland turned his head slightly, just enough to look at her. "After that, I decided I would never let myself need anyone again," she continued. "If you do not need people, they cannot hurt you when they leave. So, I built a company. Built a life. Made myself untouchable." "Did it work?" Arland asked. Mara thought about the question. Thought about her penthouse apartment that felt like a museum. Thought about the boardroom where people feared her, but no one knew her. Thought about the nights she went home and realized she had not spoken to anyone about anything real in months. "No," she said. "It did not." The wind screamed outside, rattling the windows. The fire burned low, and in the small, cold cabin, 2 broken people lay side by side, sharing warmth and grief, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, surviving the night was enough. Hours passed. Mara's shaking finally stopped. The warmth seeped back into her body, slow and steady. She could feel Arland beside her, still tense, still careful, but present, real human. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "Why did you really pull me out? You could have driven past, called someone, let them handle it." Arland was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "Because I was too late for her, and I could not be too late again." Mara closed her eyes, something twisting in her chest. She did not have words for what she was feeling. Gratitude, maybe, or guilt, or something else entirely. So, she did the only thing she could think of. She reached out slowly and rested her hand on his arm. He did not pull away. They stayed like that, as the storm raged on. 2 strangers, finding something like comfort in the space between survival and surrender. And for the first time in years, Mara Lennox let herself be vulnerable. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. By dawn, the worst of the storm had passed. But the cold remained brutal. Mara woke first, disoriented, her body stiff and sore. Arland was still beside her. Asleep, finally, his face softer in rest than it had been awake. She studied him for a moment. This man who had saved her life for reasons that had nothing to do with her. Then she heard it. A faint sound outside. An engine maybe, or voices. Arland's eyes snapped open. He sat up immediately, alert in a way that suggested he had never really been asleep at all. He moved to the window and looked out. "Search and rescue," he said. Relief flooded through Mara, sharp and immediate. They were going to be okay. They were going to get out of here. But as Arland turned back to look at her, Something in his expression made her chest tighten, because she realized with sudden clarity that getting out meant going back to her life, back to her company, back to the cold, untouchable world she had built, and she was not sure she wanted to anymore. The rescue team arrived with thermal blankets and questions Mara did not want to answer. 2 paramedics, a sheriff's deputy, and a volunteer firefighter who looked too young to be out in weather like this. They assessed her quickly, vitals stable, possible concussion, mild hypothermia, and insisted she go to the hospital for observation. She did not argue. Arguing required energy she did not have. Arland spoke to the deputy in low tones near the door, gesturing toward the embankment where the SUV still sat buried in snow. The deputy nodded, scribbling notes on a pad that was already damp from the cold. Through the open door, Mara could see the world outside, white and brutal and unforgiving. 48 hours ago, she would have seen it as just another obstacle. Now it looked like something else, a reminder, maybe. That control was an illusion, and survival was never guaranteed. They loaded her into the back of an ambulance, and she caught Arland's eye one last time before the doors closed. He stood near his truck, hands shoved in his pockets, watching. She wanted to say something, "Thank you, maybe," or "I am sorry," or "I do not know what happens next," but the doors shut, and the moment passed. The hospital was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers stood out. They put her in a private room, ran tests, and confirmed what Arland had already told her. Concussion, bruising, minor frostbite on her toes. Nothing that would not heal. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, told her she was lucky. Mara did not feel lucky. She felt hollow. They kept her overnight for observation. She spent the hours staring at the ceiling, replaying the past 2 days in her mind. The crash, the cabin, the way Arland had looked at her when she had admitted she did not know how to be weak, the warmth of his arm under her hand. She had spent years perfecting the art of not needing anyone. And in one night, a stranger had dismantled everything she thought she knew about herself. By morning, they cleared her to leave. Her assistant, Davis, arrived with a change of clothes and a rental car. He looked relieved to see her alive, though he was too professional to say it outright. "The board has been calling non-stop," he said as they walked to the parking lot. "They want to know when you will be back." "Soon," Mara said automatically, but the word felt wrong in her mouth, like a lie she was telling herself. She returned to the city 3 days later. Her penthouse apartment was exactly as she had left it. Immaculate. Sterile. Empty. She stood in the living room, looking out at the skyline, and felt nothing. The view that used to make her feel powerful now just made her feel small. Work did not help. She threw herself into meetings and reports and strategy sessions, but everything felt distant, like she was watching her own life through a window. Her team noticed. Davis asked if she was feeling all right. She told him she was fine. He did not believe her, but he did not push. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The bruises faded. The headache stopped, but the hollow feeling remained, growing larger every day until it felt like it might swallow her whole. She thought about Arland more than she should have. Wondered if he was okay. Wondered if he thought about that night at all, or if he had already moved on, filed it away as just another thing he had survived. She told herself it did not matter. They were from different worlds. The cabin had been an anomaly, a moment outside of time. Going back would be foolish. But she could not stop thinking about what he had said, because I was too late for her. And I could not be too late again. On a Tuesday afternoon, Mara left the office early. She did not tell Davis where she was going. She just got in her car and drove. The mountain looked different in daylight without the storm. The roads were clear now, sunlight glinting off snow that had turned crystalline and beautiful. She found the turnoff to the cabin almost by instinct, though she had to park at the main road and walk the last half-mile. Her boots crunched through the snow, and her breath came out in white clouds. The cabin looked smaller than she remembered. Quieter. Arland's truck was not there. She stood on the porch for a long time, debating whether to leave. When she heard an engine behind her, she turned. Arland's truck rolled to a stop, and he climbed out slowly, his expression unreadable. He wore the same worn flannel, the same exhaustion in his eyes. But there was something else there, too. Surprise, maybe, or weariness. "Mara," he said, her name sounding strange in his voice. "I should have called first," she said. "Do not have a phone up here." She nodded, suddenly unsure why she had come. What was she supposed to say? That she could not stop thinking about him? That the cabin had changed something in her she did not know how to name? Arland walked up the porch steps, stopping a few feet away. "You okay, physically?" "Yes." "And the other way?" She looked at him, at the way he was watching her, like he could see straight through the walls she had spent years building. "I do not know," she admitted. He nodded, like that was the answer he had expected. "You want to come in?" The cabin was cold, but not freezing. Arland started a fire, while Mara stood near the door, her hands shoved in her coat pockets. When the flames caught, he straightened and looked at her. "Why did you come back?" he asked. "I wanted to thank you properly." "You already did." "No, I did not." She took a breath. "You saved my life. And I do not just mean pulling me out of the car. You." She struggled to find the words. "You reminded me what it feels like to be human." I had forgotten. Arland's expression softened slightly. "You did not forget. You just buried it." "Maybe." She looked around the cabin at the bed, where they had shared warmth and grief. "I have spent my whole life building walls after my father died. I told myself I would never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. And it worked. For a long time, it worked. But then you." She stopped, shook her head. "You did not ask for anything. You did not want anything. You just helped because it was the right thing to do. And I did not know people like that still existed." Arland was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I am not a good person, Mara. I saved you because I was too scared to live with another ghost. That is not noble. That is selfish." "Maybe," she said. "But you still did it." The fire crackled between them. Outside, a bird called sharp and clear. "I have a son," Arland said suddenly. "Rowan, he is 8, lost his mom 3 years ago, and he has been the only thing keeping me going since. Some days I do not know if I am doing it right. Most days, I am pretty sure I am not. But I keep trying because he deserves someone who tries." Mara nodded slowly. "Can I meet him?" Arland looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. "Why?" "Because I want to know the person who matters most to you. Because I think—" She stopped, choosing her words carefully. "I think you have spent 3 years taking care of everyone else and forgetting to take care of yourself. And maybe I cannot fix that, but I would like to try. You just helped because it was the right thing to do. And I did not know people like that still existed." Arland was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I am not a good person, Mara. I saved you because I was too scared to live with another ghost. That is not noble. That is selfish. You just helped because it was the right thing to do. And I did not know people like that still existed." Arland was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I am not a good person, Mara. I saved you because I was too scared to live with another ghost. That is not noble. That is selfish. For a long moment, Arland did not respond. Then slowly, he nodded. Okay. They drove back to his house in separate cars, Mara following his truck down winding roads that turned from snow-packed to plowed to almost normal. His house was small and comfortable, the kind of place that felt lived in. A tire swing hung from a tree in the front yard. A snowman, lopsided and melting, stood near the porch. Rowan met them at the door. He was small for 8, with dark hair and his father's serious eyes. The way his shoulders relaxed, the way something that had been tightly wound inside him seemed to loosen just a little. When Rowan went outside to work on his fort, Arland and Mara stayed at the table. The silence between them was comfortable now, not heavy. "He is a good kid," Mara said. "Yeah, he is. You are doing it right. You know, the parenting thing." Arland looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "You think so?" "I know. So." He nodded slowly, like he was trying to let himself believe it. Mara took a breath. "I do not know what this is, what we are doing, but I would like to. I would like to keep trying if that is okay." Arland met her eyes. "Yeah, it is okay." They did not make promises. They did not talk about the future or what came next. They just sat together in the kitchen, watching Rowan through the window as he packed snow with mittened hands, building something that would probably melt by next week, but mattered anyway. Mara thought about the cabin, about the way Arland had covered her with blankets and fed her soup and let her be weak without judgment. About the way she had told him things she had never told anyone. She thought about her penthouse apartment, cold and empty, and about this small kitchen that smelled like hot chocolate and felt like home. She did not know if she could change, did not know if she could unlearn 15 years of walls and armor and self-protection. But as she watched Arland stand and pour himself more coffee, as Rowan burst through the door, demanding they come see his fort, she thought maybe she could try. And maybe that was enough. Outside, the snow began to fall again. Soft and gentle this time. Not a storm, just weather, just life. And inside the small house at the edge of the mountain, 2 people who had survived their own separate winter sat together, warming their hands on mismatched mugs, learning what it meant to let someone in. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do was save someone. And sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself be saved. Mara Lennox was learning to do both.